They love you struggling, but they resent you succeeding. We'll talk about psychology of envy. Remember that situation, maybe you had several when she smiled at your good news, but the room suddenly felt colder. And maybe she or he said something just a little off, like a joke with a sharp edge, a compliment that stung. You know that feeling when someone's reaction doesn't quite match their words. When people say congratulations, but it feels hollow. When you can sense something darker beneath the surface. So that's not just awkward social behavior. That might be suppressed envy. And it often wears the mask of passive aggression. Maybe you notice how some people are very good when you're struggling. They're supportive, caring. They always there with advice. But the moment you succeed, they disappear or they start subtly tearing you down. And here's another question. Have you ever felt that uncomfortable tight sensation in your chest when someone else succeeds? When they get the job, they get the house, the relationship you thought you deserved? And no matter how much you tell yourself to be happy for them, a part of you still burns. That's envy. And it's one of the most misunderstood and shame-filled emotions that we experience. I am Dr. Alyona Prikhidko, and for the last few decades, I've been studying emotion regulation as a researcher and work to help people cope with feelings and trauma as a therapist. And so on this channel, I share insights and tools which resonate with you and help you feel better, heal, and grow. And so today we're going deep into the psychology of envy, both when you experience envy and when you're on the receiving end of it. Because understanding this emotion might be the key to protecting your peace and transforming your pain into purpose. Let's begin by understanding what envy actually is. It's that painful emotion that arises when we compare ourselves to others and feel inferior. And it's not just wanting what they have, it's that stress that we don't have and the fear that we never will. It's that fear that we will never have what they have. Brain imaging research shows that envy activates the same neural regions as physical pain, which is why it feels so intense. That burning sensation in your chest when you see someone else succeeds, it's when your brain is processing it the same way it processes physical hurt. And when we're taught that good women shouldn't feel envy at all, that it's shameful and spiritual, that is when envy turns underground. And when it turns underground, it gets weaponized. Instead of admitting I'm hurting, some people start gossiping, mocking, competing in secret. This is shadow behavior. So when we can't tolerate something in ourselves, we see it in others and try to destroy it. If you were taught that envy equals shame, then someone else's success might feel like your failure. And that's how malicious envy is born. As I discussed in my previous videos, some researchers distinguish between two types of envy: benign envy, which can motivate growth and self-improvement, and malicious envy, which stems from resentment and powerlessness. The difference matters because one can drive you forward while the other can destroy your relationships and damage your mental health. And if we don't learn to regulate envy, it can lead to anxiety, depression, relationship conflict, and even burnout. So let's talk about how to actually work with this emotion without suppressing it, without shaming it, but trying to transform it, use it for good. We're going to look at envy regulation today through Dr. James Cross's process model of emotion regulation. It's one of the most influential and scientifically validated frameworks in emotion regulation science. What makes Dr. Gross's model so powerful is that it shows us 5 specific points where we can intervene in the emotion generation process, like from before the emotion even starts to after it's fully activated. Most people only know 1 or 2 ways to deal with difficult emotions, usually either avoiding them completely or like pushing through them. By examining envy through Gross's model, we get a better roadmap. with multiple strategies we can use. Understanding this model can transform how you relate to envy and any other challenging emotion that you experience. Let me walk you through each of Gross's 5 stages with practical tools that you can use immediately, both if you're experiencing envy yourself and if you're dealing with someone else's envy that is directed at you. Stage 1, situation selection. So you are choosing your exposure. The first stage in Gross' model is situation selection. This means choosing which situations to approach or avoid before the emotion even arises. Think of this as upstream prevention. If you are experiencing envy, what you can do. So for instance, research shows that people who constantly scroll through social media, highlight reels, or attend events where they feel chronically inferior set themselves up for repeated envy triggers. This doesn't mean you need to isolate yourself, but it does mean that you need to become more intentional. Ask yourself, are there environments, platforms, or social contexts that consistently leave me feeling envious? If Instagram makes you feel inferior every time you open it, that's your data. You can choose to limit your exposure or unfollow certain accounts or refrain why you're there. And this is not you avoiding anything. It's your self-care, strategic self-care, because when you reduce exposure to comparison-heavy environments, you reduce envy-related stress. And if you are on the receiving end of someone else's envy, some people are great when you're struggling, right? But as we discussed, but once you rise, they start acting differently. You get to choose how much access these people have to your life. I don't think that we should minimize to make others feel comfortable, because shrinking doesn't save us. It just teaches others that, we can kind of suppress our joy. And you do not owe everyone like front row seat to your life and your successes. You can protect your energy by being selective about what you share and with whom. I recommend to set energetic boundaries. Limit how much you share with people who make you feel uncomfortable, twisted. Protect your joy like it's sacred, because it really is. Then stage 2 is situation modification. Basically, it's about changing the context. Let's say you can't avoid the situation entirely. Maybe it's a work meeting where a colleague gets praised, or a family gathering where comparisons happen all the time. So the second stage in Dr. Gross's model is situation modification. You actively change aspects of the situation to reduce the emotional impact. If you are experiencing envy, for example, you know a coworker who and their success triggers you, you might modify the situation by focusing your attention on collaborative goals rather than competitive ones, or by shifting the conversation to include others' contributions. Because research shows that when people modify situations to reduce social comparison, like asking about someone's process rather than just their outcome, people experience less envy and more connection. You are not changing reality, but you are reshaping how you engage with your reality. Try this. Instead of sitting silently while someone shares their success, ask them a genuine question about their journey. What was the hardest part? What surprised you? Because this shifts you from passive comparison with outcome to active engagement and reality testing. And it humanizes people in your mind. If you are on the receiving end of someone's envy, you can modify situations by being mindful of how you share your wins. And this doesn't mean hiding your success, it means being strategic. Instead of announcing your promotion, let's say in a group chat where you know someone is struggling, you might share it one-on-one with people you trust, with people who you know will celebrate you genuinely, because they also feel content with their lives. You can also redirect conversations. If someone makes a passive-aggressive comment, you can choose not to engage. Just change the subject, refuse to participate in that dynamic that they are trying to create. Name the energy, not always the person. Because you don't need confrontation. But do trust your gut when something feels off. Cold support is not real support, and it means that another person is probably struggling and most likely feels miserable. Stage 3 is attention deployment, where you place your focus. Now we move to Gross's third stage, attentional deployment. Envy thrives on narrow focus. You zoom in on what they have and what you lack. But attention is flexible and you have more control over it than you think. If you are experiencing envy, one evidence-based technique here is gratitude contrast. Take 60 seconds and name 5 things in your life that you're deeply grateful for, especially those things that have nothing to do with achievement. Brain imaging studies show that when we deliberately shift attention toward gratitude, we activate different neural pathways than envy, literally changing what your brain notices over time. Another strategy is distraction, which can be helpful in the short term, like redirecting your focus to a task or some other conversation. But be careful, because chronic distraction without deeper processing can eventually backfire. So the key is using attentional deployment as a bridge, not like a permanent escape for yourself. When you notice envy rising, literally look around the room and identify 3 things you can see, 2 things you can hear, and 1 thing you can physically feel. This grounds you in the present moment, and it interrupts that comparison spiral that you are jumping on. If you are on the receiving end of someone else's envy, you need to learn to redirect your attention away from their negativity and toward people who genuinely celebrate you. Do not give their passive aggression more mental energy than it deserves. When someone makes a cutting remark, notice it, acknowledge it internally, and then deliberately shift your focus to something that nourishes you. Find people who celebrate you, not compete with you, because real friends won't resent your light. So give your attention and energy to people who enjoy your successes. Cognitive change. Here's where the magic happens. Gross's 4th stage, cognitive change. It's often called cognitive reappraisal. This is one of the most researched and effective emotion regulation strategies. It means changing how you interpret the situation. If you are experiencing envy, instead of thinking, she has what I will never have, you can reframe it as, she has what I desire, and that shows me what is important to me. You're not denying reality, you're not faking positivity, you are extracting meaning and values and your needs. People who practice cognitive reappraisal experience less anxiety, less depression, less stress when faced with envy. It works because you're not fighting the emotion, you're transforming its narrative. Let me give you a practical tool. Think of someone you feel envious of right now. Write down the specific qualities or achievements they have that trigger you. Maybe it's beauty, maybe it's confidence, maybe it's career success, maybe it's number of children. Now reframe each one. If you envy their confidence, what does that tell you about what you value? Maybe it reveals that confidence is something you've been afraid to claim for yourself. This shifts envy from a shameful secret into a guidepost, which points toward your own growth. When someone's success irritates you, pause and ask, what feels threatened in me? Is it my identity, my value? Is it my sense of fairness? What is it? Translate envy into truth. Envy often covers pain. I wish I felt that confident. I'm afraid I'll never get there. So what you need to get curious and turn envy into aspiration. Use that discomfort as fuel. Ask yourself, what's one brave step I can take toward what I actually want, what I actually value? You can feel envy and be kind. Supporting others doesn't mean that you need to shrink. It means that you're showing up honestly. If you are on the receiving end of someone's envy, you need cognitive reappraisal too. When someone's coldness stings, it's easy to internalize it and feel like maybe I'm too much, maybe I should tone it down. Reframe it. Their reaction is about their pain. Their reaction is not about my worth. My worth is stable. It protects you from making their wound about your value. Their wound is their wound. Your value is your value. Their envy is not, it's just information about their internal world. And you can, if you want, have compassion for their struggle, but you do not, you never, never, never shrink your light. And the fifth strategy, finally, we reach Gross's fifth stage, response modulation. What happens after the emotion is already fully activated is when people often try suppression, pushing the emotion down or pretending it's not there, smiling. Here's the problem. Research shows that chronic suppression increases anxiety, cardiovascular stress, and even impairs memory. It doesn't make the emotion to go away. It just drives it like in the closet, and where it festers. Suppression is the least effective strategy, and at the same time, it's the one most people default to. So what's the alternative? If you are experiencing envy, first of all, self-compassion is a powerful response modulation strategy. Instead of suppressing envy, you acknowledge it with kindness. You can try, for example, to write a letter to yourself from the perspective of a wise, loving mentor. Acknowledge the envy without judgment. Say something like, of course I feel this way. I've been working so hard and I want to be seen too. Research on self-compassion shows that it reduces shame, and it also buffers against negative emotions, and actually it helps you process difficult feelings rather than avoid them. Another response modulation technique is expressive writing. You can spend like around 10 minutes journaling about your envy, who you envy, what it feels like in your body, what it makes you want to do. Studies show that expressive writing about difficult emotion reduces rumination. Now let's talk about what I call projection work. When you envy someone, you often assign them an emotional state. You imagine that they feel powerful or loved, or maybe they are admired or invincible. But that's a fantasy your mind creates, and it intensifies your pain. Try this. Visualize the person you envy in an ordinary moment, doing dishes, struggling with something, feeling tired. This humanizes them and brings your nervous system back into balance because it reduces the intensity of your emotional response of idealization. If you are on the receiving end of someone else's envy, don't suppress your joy to make others feel comfortable. Do not self-abandon, but do process the hurt that their behavior causes. You can journal about it. You can talk to a trusted friend who celebrates your successes. You can let yourself feel the disappointment when you realize that someone you thought would celebrate you actually resents you. And then make a conscious choice about what to do within that relationship. Depending on the severity of their envy, sometimes, well, the most loving thing you can do sometimes for yourself is to create more distance. You need to think about it carefully because maybe they are willing to change and become more aware. Cultural context matters. In my own research, we found something very interesting. The relationship between envy and psychological distress was moderated by emotion regulation strategies like suppression and cognitive reprisal, but only when we accounted for demographic factors like race, socioeconomic status, and living environment. So in plain language, it means that your context matters. If you live in a high-pressure, comparison-saturated culture, or if you've faced systemic barriers or discrimination, envy may hit you harder. Some people are swimming in calmer waters, so to speak. Others are navigating a storm. The same emotion regulation strategy might work differently depending on your circumstances. And that's why we need to have that personalized awareness. Gross's model works within your lived reality. That's why we can't just tell people think positive or just be grateful and expect that it will solve everything. The strategies we choose must account for the systemic and cultural forces that shape our emotional lives. For example, if you're a woman in a male-dominated field and you're constantly watching men get promoted over you, your envy isn't just personal. It's also a response to injustice. If you're from a marginalized community where success stories are rare, your envy might be entangled with grief about what you were never given access to. Of course, context doesn't excuse harmful behavior, but it does help us understand the roots of that behavior and respond with clarity and compassion. Now, let's talk about ways to turn envy into insight. Envy often shows us what we've disowned in ourselves. If you envy someone's bravery, maybe your inner brave self has been silenced. If you envy their wealth, maybe you haven't given yourself permission to want more. If you envy their confidence, maybe you've been hiding your own confidence and your own light. So ask yourself, what is envy pointing me toward? Then write down one micro action you can take this week that honors that part of you. Maybe it's posting your work. Maybe it's asking for a raise. Maybe it's wearing something that makes you feel powerful or pretty or sexy. Take that step, not to compete with the person you envy, but to become more of who you are. Because you don't need to get rid of envy, and it's not even possible. It's one of the emotions that even animals have. But you can learn to listen to it and use it for your own benefit. When you stop shaming it and start translating it, envy becomes your sort of portal to personal growth. Emotional regulation isn't just about suppression or control. It's about flexibility. It's about knowing which strategy to use at which point in that emotion generation process. And it's about recognizing that all emotions, even painful ones like envy, carry super valuable information about you. So if you feel envy rising, never shame it. Listen to it. Because handled with honesty, envy can actually become your bridge to fulfilling your desires. And if you feel targeted by someone else's envy, never shrink. Just protect your peace and set boundaries. You are not responsible for managing other people's pain at all. Even if you identify with my another video on emotional container. But no, you are not obligated to do that. No. The key to coping with envy is building a toolkit so you can respond to this emotion with intention rather than react from shame or anxiety. So remember, strategies we discussed: situation selection, choose your exposure; situation modification, change the context when you can; attentional deployment, direct your focus intentionally; cognitive change, reframe the meaning; response modulation, manage your response with self-compassion and not suppression. Because envy, when we understand it and when we regulate it, becomes our teacher. If this resonates with you, leave a comment about what envy has taught you. And if you're ready for deeper work, check out my video series on emotional healing and shadow integration. Your emotions, even the uncomfortable ones, are not the problem. How you relate to them, this is what makes all the difference. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Take care.